I'm Dee with Modesty Matters. We're a business dedicated to providing products for modest-minded families. Today, I'm going to teach you how to make our colonial dress. The first thing you'll need to do is to take out and assemble your pattern and then cut it to the size that you require. I'm going to take the back of our bodice piece and I'm going to place it on the fold of our material. Here's our fold. Way over here is our selvage. I'll pin all the way around and then I'll cut here all the way around like this until here. And I'll stop here because we're going to want to open this piece up. Then here is our bodice front. Now you're going to want to line up this line right here with the grain of your fabric. Make sure that it's straight with your fabric. Don't follow this line because this line is supposed to be at an angle. So you'll want to make sure that you line that up very carefully. And you're going to pin this and you're going to cut all the way around this. That'll create two pieces. Here's your sleeve. Same thing with this. You'll want to line it up with your arrow. Make sure you have it straight on the material. And you'll pin it all the way around and cut it all the way around. Now you're going to take these two pieces and you're going to cut them out exactly the same way on your lining material. You don't need the sleeve, but you need these two cut out with your lining material. Here we have some lining material. I'll lay our colonial bodice back on the fold and our front just like this. And now this is our inset and we'll need a piece of that also. We'll need to cut out. We'll cut this out once, but it's doubled. Our material's doubled, so we'll actually have two pieces of this. The last thing we're going to cut out is the ruffle that goes around our sleeves. We're going to cut basically a long strip. To do that, here's our material. We're going to fold it. I'm going to fold it again. And I'm going to measure out 3 inches for the 2T and the extra small, and I'll measure out 5 inches for the larger sizes. What I'll do is simply mark it and then cut it right there. And it'll be a nice even strip all the way across. Alright, here are our pieces that we've just cut out. Here are both of our backs, our lining and our primary fabric. And these are our fronts. And what we're going to do is take these like this and we're going to pin them at the shoulders and we're going to do straight stitch at 5/8 inch straight across here. And we're going to do the same thing with our lining material. Okay, here we have it. I've pinned our shoulder seams. Now we're going to take this to the machine. What I've done is I've lined up the raw edge of my material with this 5/8 inch mark that's right up here. As I sew, I will keep it right in line with that mark. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to bring my needle down, and this is called needle down position. This is how we will start all of our seams. Now as I begin my seam, I take a couple of stitches forward and a couple of stitches backward, and then I go and I finish that seam down to the end. I stop and I go backwards and forwards again. Now what that does is that locks your seam in place so you have a nice secure beginning and ending of your seam. We're going to do that on all 4 shoulder seams. Alright girls and ladies, now that I have stitched our shoulder seams, I'm going to open them up just like this, and I'm going to press them open. I'm going to do that on all 4 seams. Our next step is to take our right sides, which is the pretty side, and put them together. Just like this. And we're going to pin beginning at our shoulder seams. Right here. And right here. And then we'll pin all the way down this edge, here, and around. All right, now that we've pinned all the way around, we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and again, we're going to do a straight stitch at 5/8 inch all the way around this curve. And here we are beginning at the 5/8 inch mark and our needle down position. Again, always stop to remove your pins. Alright girls and ladies, now we have stitched all the way around this. We are going to come right here to this curve and we're going to make notches. And this is going to help it to turn nicely and lay well. To make notches, you just cut out little triangles all the way around the severe curve area. Now anytime you have a curve that you're going to need to turn, you'll want to do this. As you clip, just be very careful that you don't clip through the stitching that you just put in. Now here we have our notches clipped out. If by chance you accidentally cut through the seam that you made, you'll just need to go back to the machine and reinforce that. Hopefully you won't. Now we'll take this to the ironing board and we're going to iron this open. Okay, one thing I prefer to do is I prefer to go over it one time, setting that seam, and then open it up and turn it. Of course, putting your lining to the inside, and we'll press it in place. Now you can see how nicely that lays now that we've pressed it. Now here are our inset pieces. I placed them together. I've pinned them at the top. I'm going to take this to the machine now and I'm going to straight stitch it at 5/8 inch straight across here, just like that. I lock our stitch straight across. And now I've taken this to the ironing board and I'm going to press that seam open and right over. Now we get to go to some of the pretty embellishments. First thing we're going to do is take our lace and I'm going to put it right across here. Enough to go across the top. I'm going to pin it in place and then stitch it very closely along that top edge in place. I'll show you the other side. I'm going to straight stitch as closely as I can right along that fold to secure that lace in place. All right, beginning in our needle down position. Now we've stitched our lace in place. Now we're going to take our grosgrain ribbon and we're going to place it like this. Like this. And just crisscross so that it looks the way you want it to, going down this little inset piece. I'll do one more. Be sure that they overlap in the same way on each X that you've made. This one goes over the top on each one. Now you're going to need to pin these in place very carefully, and then we're going to go back and stitch, straight stitch right down the sides to secure those in place. Now you have to be very careful to make sure you line it up, get it all even. All right, here we have it. Now, when it's all said and done, it's going to look very fancy and tricky, but it's really not. It's just 3 X's with grow gain ribbon. We're going to take this to the machine, and we're going to straight stitch right down the edge of this. Not a 5/8 inch, but right down the edge, just to secure this in place. I'm going to go very carefully, and actually what I do is I reverse over the ribbon to make sure I give it a good secure setting in the seam. Now you will want to be careful because they can slip around on you a little bit, so you want to go nice and slow over this part. Here's the seam we just stitched, and we're going to come over here. We're going to do the exact same thing on this side. Here's the piece we just finished stitching. Let me show you what this is going to look like. We're going to stitch this right in between our front pieces here. That's going to be so cute. It looks so tricky, but it was actually so simple. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to pin this in place right along here, and we'll straight stitch right up here to secure that. Now I've pinned these in place. I'm going to straight stitch as closely as I can along this fold to secure this, and then come right over here and do the same thing here. Now I've straight stitched right very carefully along the edge of this, and I'm going to take it back and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Alright, the final thing we're going to do now is take our eyelet or our lace, whichever you've chosen, and we're going to pin it right along the very edge of this, and we're going to stitch that in place all the way around. Just all the way around like that. Okay. I've pinned all the way around, and now I'm going to take it to the machine, and I'm going to stitch it as closely as I can right along this, all the way around here. Here's the adorable front of our bodice, all finished. Okay. And here's our 3-inch strip, and we're just going to cut this in half. Alright, now we're going to work on our ruffled sleeves. We're going to take our 3-inch pieces. Now these are 3-inch for the extra small and the 2T 5-inch wide for all the others. I'm going to hem the very bottom. Make sure your material is going the correct way, because the ruffles are going to be going this way. Now this is called a rolled hem. What I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it up 1/4 of an inch I'm going to press it. I'm going to do that all the way across. Then I'm going to roll it on itself again, just like that, and I'm going to press it and pin it in place all the way across. Right, now once you have pressed and pinned, both will be ruffles. We're going to take it to the machine and we're going to straight stitch straight across here, close to this fold right here. Right, we are going to gather our ruffle using the needle and thread method. I take a needle that I've double threaded and I simply go in and out right along the top of this, in and out, in and out. It's kind of loading that needle like that. Pull it through. And I'm going to do that all the way across the top. Now it doesn't have to be perfect because you're going to take this stitch out anyway once you sew it in place. Now this is a wonderful method of gathering. In fact, this is the same method that we're going to use for the skirt. And you'll see that you have so much control over your gathers and how nice and even they come out. Here we have our sleeve and here we have our ruffle that we just gathered. What I'm going to do is put this across here and I'm going to pin it in place. At the beginning and at the end. And I'm going to gently space the gathers all the way across. To do that, you'll pull your thread if you need to, or you'll let it out a little bit if you need to. And you have just a lot of control over these gathers. Right, I'll pin it right in the middle to keep it nice and even. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take it to the machine and I'm going to straight stitch right across here to secure that in place. And as I sew along, I stop and I readjust the gathers, and that's the beauty of this method, that you can do that. Now there are many other methods for gathering, but I really prefer this one out of all of them. I'm just going to clip this thread now that I put in, and I'm just going to pull it out. There we go. Now that I've pulled that thread out, I'm going to take this back to the machine and I'm going to zigzag stitch right along this to finish that seam, prevent it from fraying. All right. Now I've zigzag stitched along that raw edge. I'm going to turn it down just like this, and I'm going to press it. I'm going to press it with the seam going this way, going up. And the reason I do that is because now I can take it back to the machine, straight stitch right along this so it'll never flop around like when it's washed. So now we're going to straight stitch right along the edge of this fold. And here you have it. This is a beautiful beautiful sleeve ready to put on. We're going to do the exact same thing for the other sleeve, and then I'll show you how to put these on. I'm going to take our sleeve that we just assembled. I'm going to find the very center top of it, folding it in half, finding the center, and I marked it with a pencil right there, just a tiny bit. Now I'm going to take our pieces and put them right sides together. It's like this. Remember, that's the pretty side. And I'm going to line that little mark up with my shoulder seam right there. I'm going to pin it right there. Now this is going to be a smooth sleeve as opposed to a puffy sleeve. Now since we don't want any gathering, we're going to smooth this all the way around this opening for our arm here, and we're going to pin it in place. Here's our sleeve pinned right to that armhole. Now we're going to take that to the machine and we're going to straight stitch that at 5/8 inch. And we're going to do that to both sleeves. Now that you've straight stitched both of your sleeves on, we're going to come back and we're going to zigzag stitch right along this raw edge to finish that seam and to keep it from fraying. Alright, in my needle down position, I'm going to straight stitch. This time I'm not lining it up with the 5/8 inch, but I'm lining it up with the edge of our presser foot. And forward and backwards. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to gusset our tie back. We've sewn all the way along that edge. I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to open that seam up, and I'm going to press it flat right in the middle. Alright, we're in needle down position, and I'm going to go forward at 5/8 inch. Stop and go back, and go forward again. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other end. With our needle down, we're going to stitch forward and stop, and go in reverse, and then go forward again. What we're going to do now is we're going to take this piece and we're going to cut it exactly in half, just like this. So we have our two tie backs. Now we need to turn them though. What I like to use is just a plain old dowel rod. You can use a pencil or anything else that'll work for you. But this is the sewn end, and I push it into itself. And push it all the way down. Then I scoot it up a bit and grab that end. I'm going to pull it off, just like that. All right, here we have our 2 gusseted tie backs pressed down nicely and ready to put on our bodice. Now that we've made our tie backs, we're going to put them on our bodice. I'm putting this on the back of our bodice, and I'm measuring up 1 inch from the bottom, and I'm going to pin it in place. Now note, the seam is down, is against the material. Now that I've done the same thing on both sides, I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm going to stay stitch it right along the edge, fairly closely to the edge, right here. I'm going to go up and down a couple of times. And as we sew the side seams, that's going to be hidden in the seam, so you won't see it. So let's take this to the machine and secure this. Okay, now again, this is not a 5/8 inch seam. This is very close along the edge, just enough to secure it in place so that we can go back and do the seam. Now what I've done is I've pinned these up out of the way so they don't end up in the seam. Now I'm going to turn my piece inside out, just like this. And we're going to do the side seams. And we're going to start right down here at our ruffle. We're going to pin that together. Going to come over here, going to match up our seams and pin that together. Now I'm coming to this underarm seam right here and I'm lining that up as well, and I'm going to pin that in place all the way down, and I'll pin the side seam in place. Alright, now that we've pinned this together, we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we are going to straight stitch all the way along here and all the way down, and we're going to straight stitch at 5/8 inch. We're going to take it back to the machine again and we're going to zigzag stitch right along the edge of that. You're going to do the same thing on both sides. Alright, we've straight stitched right down that side seam, and I've caught the tie back, as you can see right there. That's where we secured the tie back in place. Now everything I'm doing on this one is for the size 2T, but everything is exactly the same on all the different sizes. Now I'm going to take it back to the machine and I'm going to zigzag stitch right along that raw edge to finish that seam. With right sides together, just like this. See, our right sides together. We're going to simply pin the sides together and take this to the machine and stitch it. Alright, now that we have pinned together both of those sides, we're going to take this to the machine and we are going to straight stitch down each side with a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Then we're going to come back and we're going to zigzag right along the edge to finish those seams. Starting in needle down position, go forward, reverse, and just like our other seams, we're going to go all the way to the end. Now we'll finish those edges with the zigzag stitch. Here you can see our finished seams. All right, now we are going to gather our skirt. We are going to use the needle and thread method to do this. You're going to need a good sized needle, doubled thread, and a good knot on the end of your thread. We're going to begin at our side seam, and this is really very simple. You're just going to put the needle in and just go back and forth, in and out. Like that. Pull it through. It doesn't have to be perfect. Your stitches don't have to be perfect for this. Eventually, in fact, you're going to take this out. Now that I come to the other side seam, I'm going to go ahead and knot our thread off. And notice this is just very loosely gathered. We're going to have a lot of control when we put our bodice on, and we're going to be able to pull this thread out and gather it just like we want it to. Now we're going to gather the other side of our skirt the exact same way. All right, now we have our skirt very loosely gathered. We're going to take our bodice and we're going to insert it into our skirt. Just like this. We're going to take the side seams of our bodice and the side seam of our skirt, and we're going to line that up. Pin that in place. The other side seam to the other side seam. Line it up, pin it in place. What I'm going to do now is take the center of my bodice right here, the center of my skirt, and I'm going to pin it right there. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now when I take this to the machine, I'm going to very carefully gather very evenly as I go, and I'm going to straight stitch right over these gathers. Between our center pin and our side seam pin, we're going to find the center of our gathering material, and we're going to pin it one more time in place. This is going to give us a visual so we can go back and evenly space our gathers. Okay, we're going to pin side seams and side seams. We're going to find the center. We're going to pin the center of our skirt and the center of our bodice. Then we're going to take our material and we're going to go in between. Find the center of that skirting material. We're going to pin it in between, and in between, and in between. Okay, starting just behind that side seam, we're going to start with our needle down position. Take a stitch, reverse, and now we're going to take our thread and we're going to pull it slightly and allow it to help us gather. And what we're doing at this point is we're just gathering from pin to pin. So you only have to worry about it being very even from pin to pin at this point. And I'm just going to go nice and slowly so that we can very carefully space those gathers. That's why I love this method, because you can really make these gathers even and you have so much control. And we're pulling our thread to gently gather. Now I've moved my needle all the way over to the edge, and I'm going to zigzag stitch all the way around this raw edge to give us a nice finished look. Now if you would like to come back and get rid of this basting thread, you're certainly welcome to. Just clip it out and pull it right out. Alright, now we've sewn our skirt onto our bodice with a nice gather, and we have finished the edge. Here we have it. Here are our gathers, all nicely spaced. Okay, the last thing we need to do is our hem. Because this is a rounded skirt, we're going to do a rolled hem. To do that, I'm going to set my slide ruler at 3/8 inch, and I'm going to press gently that in place. I'll come back and I'll fold it again on itself, just like this. See, basically rolling that up. I'm going to press that again, and then I'm going to pin it in place. Now I'm going to do the same thing all the way around the bottom of this skirt. We begin with our needle down, and we're going to follow with a straight stitch this fold that we created all the way around our skirt. And here's our finished product. There we go. Thanks for joining us. Come to modestymatters.net for other great projects and products to download.